Hey there! Just wanted to let you know really quick before you get into this particular chapter that at time of recording, I was dealing with the final after vestiges of my first time being infected with COVID-19. Don't worry for my health, I'm basically back at 100%. All of my symptoms are gone, with the exception of a stuffed nose and a cough. So if I sound a little more nasally in this video than I did in the previous chapters, that would be why. But don't worry, I'm otherwise at 100%, and this should go away soon. Alright, I'll let you get on to the video. Enjoy! Chapter 20. Heroes. That, my friends, is fighting the good fight. I could already see plenty of red bars on my eyes forward sparkle, but who knew how many were actually inside the Megamart itself? Unfortunately, I was already thinking that we were soon going to find out. I don't fancy the chances that their prisoners are in good shape, Cobalt commented as we ducked behind a wall on the edge of the front parking lot. Raiders aren't known for their hospitality, if any of them are even still alive. If they weren't, Watcher would not have seen fit to send us here, Stripe noted. If he didn't just send us into a trap. If he did, it was a shit trap, I pointed out. If he'd been watching us, he'd have known 3 raiders blindly charging in wouldn't have stopped us. I don't think he sent us here to die. He wants us to free the prisoners in there.
What exactly would the raiders be doing to them?
Altrix asked nervously. I gave her a grim look. Nothing good. Let's leave it at that for now. Let us handle them. You focus on providing medical assistance to those who need it, Stripe said gently to the changeling, who gave her a slow nod in return. Now we just had to figure out our approach. I was guessing that they would have the front door locked down tight, probably with scrap fortifications along the entrance, and guards all aiming their guns at the door. A frontal assault would be messy. The red bars I was seeing from that general direction did little to disprove my point. I wasn't taking into consideration any fragmentation mines they might have scattered about, tripwires, or whatever other kinds of traps this group may have come up with. Glancing down along the side of the building, I could see at least one door that was boarded up. It wouldn't be too hard to remove the board, but it could be blocked from the other side as well. Plus, the noise might attract unwanted attention to ourselves. But that was just one door. There might well be others. We should skirt around, see what's behind the Megamart, I suggested. I'm not sure I want to charge in like a raging feral. Yes, I'd rather you didn't get a shot 2 seconds in, Cobalt concurred. A place like this must have a loading dock, somewhere where they'd get deliveries and such. Unless they have that secured as well, Stripe mused. Only one way to find out. Come on. We moved along the wall while staying low to the ground, reaching a gap in the old structure and slipping in and up to the outer wall of the Megamart itself. Now I was closer, more bars were making themselves known on my EFS, and a few of them were even green. The prisoners, no doubt. We still kept low, continuing up the sides. We stopped briefly by the boarded-up door and confirmed that the boards were decayed and loose. If anything, I suppose it's a plan B. Though it would be our luck to break in on a couple of raiders running, so it was probably best to review all our options first. Also along the side was a second door without the boards, though when we tried to open it, there seemed to be chains on the other side. That's pretty much what I expected to happen. There was also a set of small metal stairs that led up to the roof, but they had collapsed partway up, so that was useless. There was nothing else along the way but discarded junk and broken down ventilation units, nothing that could help us. Finally, however, we reached the end of the outer wall that curved around the rear of the large building. We stopped at the edge, and I peered around the corner while keeping an eye on the EFS for any trigger-happy raiders. But there was nothing. Since the coast was clear, we stopped crouching and walked out into the open. Sure enough, there were a couple of large but closed metal doors, with various long-abandoned equipment scattered around the place. Definitely the loading dock we were after, but now to see if it would open. Cobalt and I approached one of the doors while Stripe kept watch, Ultrix remaining close to the zebra. While that was happening, we looked around for whatever controls would cause the door to slide open. To the left was a rusted panel with 2 large buttons, though pressing either one failed to do anything, which I suppose made sense. This place wasn't exactly receiving any power. Another glance also showed a basic padlock was chaining the door to the ground. I retrieved my screwdriver and a bobby pin, getting to work on opening the lock. It was even easier than the one back at Haven, and with a click, the lock fell away, along with the metal chains. There was still the matter of the busted controls. "We'll need to lift it," I said to Cobalt. "Slow and steady, just enough for us to roll in if everything's clear." Cobalt nodded, lighting up his horn in readiness. I did the same, and our auras intermingled as they latched onto the large metal door and began to lift. We moved as slowly and steadily as we could, only getting the lightest screech from the ancient mechanisms as it raised upwards. Once a small gap led inside, Stripe trotted over and crouched down to peer into the darkness within. She nodded after a moment and quickly rolled inside. Ultrix followed after, taking a moment to collect herself, and last but not least, Cobalt and I slowly made our way in, before gently lowering the door back to the ground. Only when it was back in place did we let our horns die out, breathing a sigh of relief. Well, we were in. Now for the fun part. The loading dock was dark and empty, the only sign of raider activity being a couple of graffiti pieces sprawled along the walls depicting the, rape and murder of the ministry mayors and princesses of Equestria, you know, the usual raider art. But aside from that, everything seemed to be quiet. I guess the raiders hadn't considered that a unicorn might just lift the door. Dumbasses. "Well, we're in," Cobalt commented. "Now what?" "They're likely to keep the prisoners in the main shopping hall," Stripe noted, never taking her eyes away from the entrances into the room. "Alongside most of the raiders, no doubt." "We need a better idea of what we're facing here," I said. Bursting in now would be no better than a frontal assault. "Their numbers, traps, everything really." "Then let us be swift," Stripe stated, trotting towards one of the nearby doorways and slowly creaking it open. After the corridor was confirmed to be clear of raiders, we began to quietly make our way down. There was more graffiti inside, along with a few empty ammo boxes and some long dried stains that I didn't even want to guess at. The corridor made a turn to the right, and we stopped just nearby to peer around. Yep, that explained the red bar. A single raider stood in the corridor with a cigarette in his mouth, facing away from us as he leaned up against a wall. There was a door next to him, with a sign indicating that it was a bathroom. I could see a staircase at the end of the hallway leading upwards, and shortly before that were 2 more closed doorways leading to Luna knows where. But that raider was between us and them. Stripe didn't say a word as she slipped past us and around the corner, moving quieter than I had thought was possible. Seriously, did she set her hooves on silent or something? Well, one way or another, the raider was too engrossed in his smoke to notice the zebra creeping up on him. Something he quickly came to regret when she latched one hoof onto his muzzle and another around his neck. He gave out a muffled cry as Stripe dragged him to the ground, squeezing tight until the stallion's movements weakened before ceasing altogether. His red bar blinked out as the rest of us rose from our hiding place and approached, Stripe discarding the raider in disgust. "You are scary sometimes, you know that?" I said teasingly towards the mare. So you like scary, hmm? Do that later. Cobalt interrupted crossly. Do what later?
I think it's cute.
Ultrix quietly added.
Not the body, though. That's really not.
I was about to retort to my friend's comments, but I was stopped when the sound of voices rapidly approached the nearest doorway past the bathroom. We barely had a second to jump inside said bathroom when it opened up, revealing 3 more raiders laughing to themselves about something or other. I made sure to grab the corpse with my magic as a sudden afterthought, dragging it into the bathroom with us, hopefully before they saw it. They didn't, but they heard it. What was that? One of the raiders rasped, and their chatter stopped instantly. Oi! Who's fucking about in here? We remained as silent as possible, not even daring to breathe. We could handle 3 raiders, but if just one of them shouted in alarm, then the whole place would come down on us. Come on out, a mare sang sadistically, giggling to herself. Though I might be in the mood for games, loser is the plaything. The 3 raiders laughed to themselves as their hoofsteps got closer and closer. We shied away from the doorway as much as we could, Stripe readying her weapons, while Ultrix cowered behind her while shaking fiercely in fear. Any second they would look in here, and there wasn't enough room in the 3 stalls to hide. And then, Ultrix gave a small whimper before stepping toward the door. Before any of us could even register her actions and stop her, we were stopped by a small flash of green flame, just before the changeling revealed herself to the raiders in the hallway. Face Pizza, what are you doing in there? Wait, his name was fucking Face Pizza? Never mind that. More important to the current situation, Ultrix had just changed. Just like that purple-eyed infiltrator from the memory orb. In a flash of green light, our meek changeling companion had morphed into the raider that Stripe had strangled a minute ago. And now Face Pizza stood in front of the 3 raiders while looking more than a little flustered. Something tells me Ultrix isn't a good actress. Yeah, why you looking all shifty back there? One of them asked. You're not overdoing the buck, are ya? Oh, great start. I just, nature's call, you know? Needed a wee and stuff. I sure hope they didn't hear the sound of Cobalt's face hoof. There were several moments of silence, and I was certain I was about to see the poor changeling get shot in the face. Pfft, never mind Buck. He's on all the shit, the mare proclaimed as she cackled to herself. Look at him! He's out of it! Oh, yeah, totally. Ultrix agreed half-heartedly. Well, save us some, or I'll skin you, the raider cautioned, before I heard their steps continue back in the opposite direction to us. I let go of the breath I was holding before I died of asphyxiation. Once we all breathed a sigh of relief, we finally exited the bathroom and joined Ultrix in the hallway, where the mayor was standing ramrod without even blinking. That was concerning, so I slowly reached out a hoof and tapped the disguised changeling on the shoulder. She gave out a small noise of distress before flopping over onto her back like a sack of partially mutated potatoes. There she laid, her left forehoof twitching every so often. I looked helplessly over at Stripe, who just gave a sigh. Ultrix, well, she clearly had not been ready for what we were going to be facing out here. But unfortunately, there was little to be done about it now but for Stripe to whisper comforting words to the young mare. While that was happening, I slowly trotted over to the door the raiders had come from and opened it a crack. Beyond it was the main shopping hall, though I could only see a little through the crack, The massive amount of red bars was most telling.
Come over here and say that, you gigantic fuckstick!
A coarse voice shouted from somewhere in the hall, and if I had to make a guess, it was the Pegasus who had gone for that raider's face earlier.
See how much of a stallion you are without your...
I shut the door as the rant continued, leaving her to it. The voice had been coming from the single group of green bars in the building, so it was definitely the captive mare we had seen. But quiet returned once the door was firmly closed, and I took a moment to take some needed breaths as I leaned against it. I saw a green flash as Ultrix returned to her normal self, shakily rising to her hooves with Stripe's help. I gave the changeling a look of concern, and she flushed with embarrassment. "You okay?" I asked her.
Yeah, kinda.
She responded, releasing a deep sigh.
I'm sorry, I'm not much of an infiltrator. Nobody ever needed to change back in the stable.
You got them to leave. You helped, Stripe assured the changeling. She gave a shaky smile in turn. And we shall work on your performance later. At least it would give her something to do, rather than think on the situation she walked into. I'm thinking up the stairs, I said to the group, gesturing to said staircase. Maybe we can get a vantage point on them. I received no argument, and we proceeded once again. We passed the other doorway, which led down another corridor the three raiders we'd met had gone down. We avoided it entirely, quickly making our way up the staircase. It led up to a staff door, and when we opened it, we found ourselves in a jungle of metal racks filled with torn rags that were probably once really nice clothes ponies wore on special occasions. Or as nice as you could get in a Megamart anyway. Still, the rags gave us ample cover to move further in undetected. I could see a few raiders through the rags hanging out at the top of an old escalator down towards the ground floor, where the rest of their buddies were located. And there were lots of them. They had built bridges across most of the aisles, across all the shelving units and long dead fridges. At the front of the store, where the cashiers once stood, there was extensive barricading constructed, guarding the entrances. I slipped into sats to give myself a better idea of what was around there, and the spell did target a few mines that witless ponies could stumble upon. The barricades had several raiders leaned against them, looking almost bored and craving an attack to occur, while a scavenged military turret beeped idly as it scanned for targets. And if that turret was the worst thing, well, we would have been lucky. No, that was the raider decked out in some weird, cobbled-together power armor. Most of it looked like it was made from scrap, but I could see at least a few pieces that had come from actual power armor, like what the Steel Rangers would use. A couple models of it, in fact. Their leader, I imagined, and he would not be fun to deal with. I shall remain here. This'll be a good vantage, Stripe noted after I exited from the spell, casting a glance at the raiders on the upper floor. Make a noise and they will come running, leaving me free to do as I wish. That gives us sniper support, I noted. I would always feel better with her watching my back through a scope, though that turret's an issue. Cobalt, can you do anything with it? Cobalt didn't respond immediately, gazing at the turret a moment before his eyes began to trail along something. Following his gaze, I noticed a wire leading from the turret towards a terminal set up on an old fish counter. If I can get there, I can probably change its targeting parameters, he explained. Maybe get it to target the guy in power armor. Okay, I was liking this plan so far. So I'm thinking we have Cobalt sneak over to the terminal and do his thing, I began. I'll be standing by to start shooting, either if Cobalt needs a distraction or when the turret opens up. After that, we all clear the raiders in the crossfire, while Ultrix avoids the fighting and sees what she can do for the captives.
I can do that.
Ultrix said, her determination to help those in medical need returning once more.
If they're hurt, I'll make them better. I promise.
All right, this is looking better for us. If we could just pull this off, then... Well, we had to pull it off. If we didn't, we were dead. Or worse, being captured by raiders after you've shot up the place is definitely worse. Okay, it's a plan. Let's do it. We left Stripe up there among the rags, where she set herself up in a nice little sniper's nest. The raiders were none the wiser as we slipped back out and down the stairs, not wasting a moment as we proceeded down the corridor and quickly out the door. We found ourselves behind a customer service counter, a couple of boxes piled up on the surface while a charred skeleton sat in a chair. The skeleton had a party hat on, courtesy of the raiders, I'd imagine. Just beyond the counter were several rows of aisles, and I could see raiders patrolling along the bridges they had constructed. There were also a couple idly milling about in the aisles themselves, either chatting amongst themselves or drinking or doing a multitude of drugs to pass the time. There was also the usual decor of their prior victims, used either as warnings to others or to make the place seem more like whatever a raider considered home to be. The same fate the captives had in store if we didn't do something, I'd bet. We waited for a raider to pass, then we followed on until we reached another counter to hide behind. This one also seemed to be staff-related, and by the extra scrap and tech lying around, it seemed to be robotics-based. What was also a giveaway, well, that was the Protect-A-Pony sitting idly in its booth, undisturbed for the last 200 years. The robot was a rusted yellow, holding the general shape of a pony while having much of its head covered with a glass dome that contained a blinking red talisman. Cobalt's eyes lit up like an excited foal. Bingo! He slinked over to the terminal as me and Altrix watched curiously. He accessed it and immediately began hacking into the terminal. Judging from the dents in the frame, I guessed that the raiders had tried, but they lacked the necessary skill to get into the computer. Cobalt was not a dumb raider. He quickly gained access, glancing through the menus that came up. He typed out a few commands, humming as he worked. He then gave himself a happy smile before logging off and returning to us. The password is metallurgy, he informed us. When I get that turret going, Scrap Heap, you activate that robot and get shooting. Want to attack us as well? I asked with a small amount of concern. I set the targeting parameters to armed ponies only, so Altrix and Stripe are fine, he explained. I also set it to ignore Pip-Buck signatures, and I programmed it so I'll be fine. I kind of wanted to press on exactly how he'd programmed all of that just now, but I didn't want a headache either, so I just nodded and smiled, hoping he got it right and I wasn't going to be disintegrated the moment I turned that thing on. Fair enough, I said before turning towards Altrix. Go back into that raider form. Don't talk to any pony, just try to walk and act like a drugged-up raider.
All right.
Altrix said uncertainly.
But, what do I do while waiting for things to go, you know, boom?
Try to get close to the prisoners. When all the raiders are distracted, get to helping them. She nodded, and just like before, green flames washed over her again, and returned the raider Stripe had killed. She looked beyond terrified, but as I had come to expect from her, she did her best to ignore it, so long as there were people who needed her help. Dear Celestia, let her make it out of this all right. I was really coming to like Altrix, and she was too damned innocent for this wasteland. Altrix left the safety of the counter behind, and I prayed to the goddess that she would be watched over. Cobalt also took this as a sign to get moving towards the terminal, and at the next best opportunity he slipped out and was lost among the aisles. And now I just had to wait. It was just me behind the counter, sitting with only my own breaths for company. By myself. The last time I had been in a conflict with raiders without support, I had to be saved. Still, I wasn't exactly alone this time, even if I couldn't see them right now. It still felt strange, though. I'd become quite accustomed to my friends always being at my side over the past couple of weeks. One of the many changes I'd experienced of late, I guess. Moments passed, and then minutes, 5, 6, each one more nerve-wracking than the last. Come on, Cobalt! I guess he was having trouble reaching the terminal. Or maybe the raiders had somehow gotten an encryption that had stumped him. I didn't know, but only the lack of gunshots stopped me from entering a full panic. Right now, there were so many things that could go wrong, so many ways my friends could get hurt if my plan failed. Oh, I bet the stable dweller never felt this nervous during one of her plans. Alright, I had to do something to pass the time. I extracted my guns, checking them over for damage that could cause it to jam. The frames looked a little dinged up, but they were otherwise in good condition. Nice to see I hadn't lost my touch when it comes to maintenance and repair. Well, that distraction went by fast. Maybe I should just access that terminal and be ready for Cobalt's signal.
What the?
That declaration was followed by the sound of a machine gun turret revving up and unloading into the raiders. Nice timing. Activate.